is our pleasure to welcome you here for this special ceremony. This room often bears witness to important moments in the history of our nation, and with today's ceremony, you are becoming part of that history. C'est un plaisir de vous accueillir ici pour cette cérémonie spéciale. Cette salle est souvent le témoin d'un moment important dans l'histoire de notre nation. Et avec la cérémonie aujourd'hui, vous faites désormais partie de cette histoire. The clerk of the Privy Council will now seek the Governor General's consent to proceed. Le greffier du Conseil privé demandera maintenant à la gouverneure générale la permission de procéder.
Excellence, pouvons-nous procéder? Excellence, may we proceed?
With the Governor General's approval, we will now proceed with the ceremony. Maintenant que le gouverneur général signifie son approbation, nous procéderons à la cérémonie. The minister who's changing responsibilities will please come forward to swear the oath of office. Le ministre qui change la responsabilité est prié de s'avancer pour prêter le serment d'office. The Honorable Dominic LeBlanc, Minister of Finance and Intergovernmental Affairs. L'Honorable Dominic LeBlanc, Ministre des Finances et des Affaires intergouvernementales.
Moi, Dominic LeBlanc, je promets et jure solennellement et sincèrement qu'au mieux de ma compétence et de ma connaissance, j'exécuterai loyalement et fidèlement les pouvoirs et je m'acquitterai des responsabilités qui m'ont été confiées en qualité de ministre des Finances et des Affaires intergouvernementales. I, Dominic LeBlanc, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will be truly and faithfully and to the best of my skill and knowledge execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Finance and Intergovernmental Affairs.
Congratulations, Minister. The Minister, the Governor General, the Prime Minister, and the Clerk of the Privy Council will now sign the oath book. Le ministre, le Premier ministre, le Gouverneur général et le greffier du Conseil privé apposeront maintenant leur signature sur le registre des serments. Your Excellency. To conclude the ceremony, please join me in congratulating the Minister. Pour terminer la cérémonie, félicitons le ministre. Thank you all for being here today. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. You guys look cold. So, bonsoir tout le monde. Évidemment, je suis très heureux, honoré de devenir ministre des Finances, de demeurer ministre des Affaires intergouvernementales. Je pense beaucoup à mes collègues à la sécurité publique. J'ai adoré être ministre de la Sécurité publique. J'étais inspiré par les femmes et les hommes qui travaillent là. Et j'ai l'intention, évidemment, de continuer de les appuyer. So, it's an honor for me tonight to become Canada's finance minister and to remain as the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. I look forward to working with Canada's premiers as I have for the last number of years on some important challenges facing the country. I'm also thinking tonight of the remarkable women and men who work in the public safety portfolio, in the department and in the agencies. I've been inspired by their work over the last year and a half, and I look forward to hopefully continuing to support them in the work that they do for Canadians. And with that, I'm obviously thrilled and happy to take your questions.
Minister,
Yeah. So we'll now go to questions. On passera maintenant aux questions. Comme d'habitude, une question est suivie. So as usual, one question, one follow-up.
Minister LeBlanc, David Baxter with the Canadian Press, if you can respond in French and English for broadcast friends. We have several Liberal MPs calling for the Prime Minister's resignation. Jagmeet Singh also calling for the Prime Minister's resignation. How does the government manage to even push its agenda forward in a minority parliament?
The government passed a series of confidence votes last week. The spending estimates were approved. The government continues to focus on the work that Canadians want us to focus on. I had today interesting conversations with officials in the incoming administration in the United States on border security. My conversation with the Prime Minister today was entirely focused on the work that we want to do to support Canadians around affordability, obviously the threat of tariffs coming from an incoming administration, and what we need to do to protect the Canadian economy. Alors moi, je suis tout à fait confiant qu'on peut continuer de faire le travail qui s'impose. Nous sommes un gouvernement, la semaine passée, qui a eu l'appui de la Chambre des communes à plusieurs motions de confiance. On est conscient du travail devant nous. Les questions de coût de la vie sont évidemment prioritaires pour le gouvernement. Pour moi, comme ministre des Finances, ce sera un focus essentiel. Nous avons aussi le travail à faire avec l'administration américaine. Je demeure ministre des Affaires intergouvernementales. J'ai l'intention, évidemment, de continuer de travailler avec les premiers ministres. Ce sont des alliés essentiels pour nous quant à la menace des possibles tarifs douaniers des États-Unis. Alors, c'est un travail que j'ai hâte à continuer.
And how much does this shake trying to work with the Americans going forward, seeing Chrystia Freeland, who stick-handled so much of it in the last Trump presidency, no longer being a part of cabinet, and we know Trump, he goes after weakness. Do you think he sees this as a weak moment in the Trudeau government?
I certainly don't propose to speak for President Trump or his administration. I was at the dinner at Mar-a-Lago 2.5 weeks ago and saw two leaders focused on a number of priorities, both in the Canada-U.S. context, but talking about global issues as well. I've continued to have discussions with incoming Secretary Lutnick, for example, the Commerce Secretary, around border security, was involved in meetings with senior officials in the incoming administration today. So the one thing I think the American administration will respect is a government that's focused on our common priorities, on the shared issues around border security, economic prosperity. Those are the issues that I'll work on very happily with our American counterparts once they're sworn in.
Bonjour, Monsieur Leblanc. Estelle Côté-Stroca de Radio-Canada. Est-ce que Justin Trudeau doit démissionner et sinon a-t-il encore la légitimité de demeurer en poste étant donné tous les appels à la démission qu'on a entendus dans les dernières heures? Je vous demanderai une réponse en français, s'il vous plaît, mais aussi en anglais.
Alors, moi, je crois que le Premier ministre demeure très concentré sur le travail que nous avons devant nous. Dans mes conversations avec lui aujourd'hui, on a parlé des questions de coût de la vie, on a parlé des finances publiques, on a parlé du travail que nous avons devant nous avec l'administration de M. Trump qui sera en poste en janvier. Moi, je crois que les Canadiens s'attendent que le gouvernement reste concentré sur ces enjeux-là. C'est le travail que j'ai hâte à faire comme ministre des Finances et ministre des Affaires intergouvernementales. Ça demeure le seul focus pour moi. Et c'était dans ma journée aujourd'hui avec mes collègues et avec le Premier ministre le seul sujet de conversation. So, the Prime Minister, like our entire government, is very focused on the work that Canadians expect us to do. We understand that cost of living for a huge number of Canadians is a very significant issue, and they expect their government to be focused on affordability issues. That was my conversation with the Prime Minister. That'll obviously be a huge focus in my work as the Minister of Finance. We need to also be extremely focused on the challenges that the incoming American administration will pose with respect to the potential imposition of tariffs. I have been doing a lot of work on border security issues over the last number of weeks. I saw two leaders focused on these issues at Mar-a-Lago when we were there 2.5 weeks ago. So I intend to continue to do the work that I have, and I think I have a pretty busy set of issues in front of me, and I'm excited about it.
Lorsque vous êtes allé à Mar-a-Lago, est-ce que vous saviez que M. Trudeau vous voyait aux finances?
Pas du tout. On a discuté quand on descendait dans l'avion et quand on revenait le lendemain matin, on a parlé de la conversation avec le président Trump et ses futurs secrétaires et le travail que je devrais faire comme ministre de la Sécurité publique quant à la question de la sécurité frontalière. Je vais assumer la présidence du comité Canada-États-Unis du cabinet. Alors, c'est un travail que je peux continuer aussi.
So Paul from the Hill Times. When were you tapped to become finance minister, and were you the first pick, or did you have to step up because no one else wanted the job?
That wasn't the conversation I had with the Prime Minister. You'd have to talk to the Prime Minister about those issues. I spoke to him this afternoon. He asked me to assume this responsibility and to remain the Intergovernmental Affairs Minister, to assume the chair's role of the Canada-U.S. Cabinet Committee, and to remain very focused on border security. So that was my conversation with him, and it's an enormous privilege. It's an enormous privilege to serve as the finance minister, and it's something that I will pour my heart and soul into for as long as I have the job.
And as finance minister, what will be your number one priority dealing with the new U.S. administration, cost of living, the $61 billion deficit?
I think the number one priority for the government has to remain the cost of living challenges that Canadian families are facing. Canadian families and Canadians across the country are feeling the pressure of the cost of living increases. They want the government to remain focused on those issues. That will be a huge focus for me as the Minister of Finance. They also expect the government to manage the public finances and taxpayers' money in an effective way. They want the expenditure of public money to be focused on what achieves results for them. So that's a job that I look forward to doing as Minister of Finance. And at this particular moment, the challenge that we're facing in terms of the potential threat of tariffs across the line on Canadian exports to the United States is a key economic concern for the government, and I look forward to working with Canada's premiers on this issue. I was very encouraged by conversations I had with a few premiers who were attending the Council of the Federation meeting today. Premier Ford, as chair of the Council of the Federation, will be a great ally for Canada, and for me, it's been a privilege to work with him in the past. But I look forward to using the very effective advocacy that premiers like Doug Ford, Premier Smith, attending conferences with American governors. These are all great assets for Canadians as we try and work together to convince the American administration that this isn't the right way to proceed. La priorité demeure pour moi des questions de coût de la vie. Les Canadiens, on connaît tous ces circonstances depuis plusieurs mois, vivent une circonstance en termes de pression financière. Le gouvernement doit demeurer focusé sur ces enjeux-là. Ce sera pour moi la priorité comme ministre des Finances. Les Canadiens s'attendent aussi que le gouvernement dépense l'argent des contribuables d'une façon responsable, qu'on dépense l'argent, encore une fois, après avoir évalué le bénéfice que ça apporte aux Canadiens, d'être responsable avec les finances publiques. Et c'est précisément le travail que j'ai hâte à faire comme ministre des Finances.
On va prendre une dernière question. We'll take one last question and a follow-up from Laura.
Mr. Laura Osmond, The Logic, you're now chair of the U.S.-Canada Committee. You're the Intergovernmental Affairs Minister. You're in charge of the border. You're in charge of all of public safety. You are also in charge now of the entire finance department. How do you propose to give all of these crucial files your full attention at such a critical time for Canada, especially facing these trade threats?
So I guess I'll start early in the morning and work late at night and probably won't take a lot of weekends off. It's an exciting time to have those responsibilities. I don't diminish for a minute the work that's before our government. The good news is I have colleagues and officials that will support me. I'm confident that Canadians will see a government focused on their priorities. And as I said, it's the cost of living challenges they're facing, and the relationship with the United States is obviously a huge focus. I remember Mr. Mulroney, the late Right Honourable Brian Mulroney, telling us that the management of that relationship was critical for the economic success of our country. He was an example of how to do that well. So I thought about him today and over the last number of weeks when I was developing, I hope, constructive relationships with incoming secretaries and officials in President Trump's administration, and do the work that will benefit Canadians.
Chrystia Freeland had some very pointed criticisms for the way this government is handling its finances, including calling, presumably the GST holiday a political gimmick, and suggesting the government's being irresponsible with Canadians' funds and not keeping its powder dry ahead of this fight with Donald Trump. How are you going to approach things differently, and what do you make of her criticisms?
Chrystia Freeland is somebody that I have worked with for well over a decade. She's somebody that I admire as a colleague, that I appreciate as a friend. She has accomplished a great deal for our government as Foreign Affairs Minister, as International Trade Minister, as Intergovernmental Affairs Minister, and most recently as Finance Minister. She has a proud record of delivering for Canadians programs as important as a national child care program, the Canadian dental benefit. So I'm proud of her record as Minister of Finance. She's contributed to the public policy life of our country in an exemplary way. And I look forward now to assuming the responsibility of being Minister of Finance, talking to my colleagues as we prepare for what will be a 2025 budget. And I have a lot of confidence in the decisions our government, our cabinet has made, but will obviously do my job as Minister of Finance over the coming months.
Do you disagree with her?
En français, Chrystia Freeland est une amie depuis bien au-delà de 10 ans. On a siégé ensemble en opposition quand on était 32 dans le troisième parti d'opposition dans le coin de la Chambre des communes. On développe des liens d'amitié avec nos collègues et c'est une de mes amies. C'est quelqu'un que j'estime beaucoup. J'ai toujours apprécié son appui. Elle est venue chez moi au Nouveau-Brunswick. Je suis allé chez elle à Toronto. C'est quelqu'un que j'admire, que je respecte. Elle a fait un travail important pour le gouvernement, pas juste comme ministre des Finances. On pense par exemple au programme de garderie, le programme de soins dentaires. Mais quand elle était ministre des Affaires étrangères, quand elle était ministre du Commerce international au début de notre gouvernement, elle a accompli beaucoup. Les responsabilités maintenant de préparer un budget pour 2025 sont avec moi et j'ai bien hâte de travailler avec mes collègues au Conseil des ministres, au caucus, les partis d'opposition. Nous sommes dans un Parlement minoritaire qui a appuyé les crédits budgétaires la semaine passée, je note. Mais en préparation pour un budget, j'ai bien l'intention de travailler avec des amis que j'ai dans d'autres formations politiques aussi. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.